What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Bayou Bengals football. So let's get into it. So I talked about Brian Kelly in his press conference at LSU the past few days, so we'll touch on a little bit more of that. So he's on SEC now, and I wanted to touch on some of the things he said. So I really like that he reiterated. I like that he really made a point to reiterate that this team really came together after that Tennessee loss. I think that is such a great point that Brian Kelly made, because this team really could have fallen apart after that Tennessee loss. They did a really good job of rebounding, playing well the rest of the season. I think that is awesome. I think it was a true testament to the players, this coaching staff, and this team having a mindset to really overcome and get after it even after adversity. And I think when Mason Smith talked about his injury, he talked about, I like how he talked about it in a positive way, that it was a way to overcome adversity. I think Mason Smith is a guy that truly embodies the identity that Brian Kelly wants in this team, to overcome adversity, trust in the process. That's something Nick Saban's kind of always reiterated. I think Brian Kelly wants to instill that in his team, trust in the process. And even if we have some downs, just know that your faith in the coaching staff, your faith in the strength and conditioning staff is going to overcome and help this team will itself to victories, even after going through some tough spots like that Tennessee loss last year. The season could have really fallen off the rails last year, but they got it right back on track. Even though they had the loss to Texas A&M, you still saw that they were competitive against Georgia, and then they finished with a really good bowl win against Purdue. But yeah, I like that. So Brian Kelly was reiterating 2022 is really about setting the tone of what this team was going to be in the future. I think that, it was setting the tone about what this team is going to be in the future. I think he knew last year they had a chance to be good, but I don't think Brian Kelly was deterred. Like, I don't think it was on the top of his mind that this team was going to do something special in year one. I think last year setting the tone, I think he was adjusting too, because coming from Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame's a high-end program, I think year one in the SEC is always adjustment. I mean, look at when Nick Saban came into the SEC for his first year, Ed Orgeron's first year at LSU. Les Miles, I can't remember Les Miles' first year, but to me, but the point is, those guys don't win a championship their first year. There's always adjustment coming into the SEC. Players talk about how the line of scrimmage play is just a lot different. So that is, but I love that Brian Kelly has emphasized that. I've talked about that before, not just on this podcast, but with other college football fans. And you listen to. I've heard a lot of Notre Dame fans, and they don't seem to think Brian Kelly's going to have as much success at LSU. But it's kind of like an apples to oranges comparison. Brian Kelly at Notre Dame and Brian Kelly at LSU. Now he can get a lot of the top end players in his home state. He's emphasized recruiting the trenches. He's got himself a high end level tight end. I know that's something he had at Notre Dame, but the Notre Dame teams that had the high-end talent, the high-end level tight end, whether it was Kyle Rudolph or Eifert, they did not have as good a team around them overall. So now he has a really high-end level tight end like Mason Taylor with a good team around it, and a team that's good at both sides of the line of scrimmage. So yeah, I think that Brian Kelly, year one was an adjustment in the SEC. I think year two, you're really going to see the gears turning. And I think that I just wanted to touch on this. I think games 3 through 4, Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas. I can't remember if that's the exact right order, but I think those 3 games are going to be extremely telling. I think the first 3 games will be extremely telling, but I think that stretch, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Ole Miss, I think, to me, it's the first 2 games that are really telling, but I think what's really telling about a championship level team is kind of like the early to mid part of the season. Like LSU in 2019, when they won it all, you saw that they won their first game. Forget who it was against. It was a smaller school that they should have won, but you saw week 2 against Texas. You saw they faced a little adversity. Texas kind of came back, and you're like, yeah, LSU looks really good. It looks like they could have a good team this year. But then you saw the stretch the few games after, like the dominant win over Vanderbilt, how explosive their offense was. You saw the games that followed. They followed up that with an encore in the weeks in the games 3, 4, and 5. So I think that people compare this LSU team to the 2019 LSU team. I think there's some similarities. I think there's some differences. I think you can compare the overall talent. Quarterback play is similar. Jane Daniels, year 2 of a system. Joe Burrow, year 2 of a system. Now, Jane Daniels to have the year Joe Burrow would be a kind of that seems pretty far-fetched, but Jane Daniels certainly is in a position to really improve. But I guess back to the point is, if LSU looks dominant in that 3-game stretch against Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Arkansas, then you have to, everyone, not only in the SEC, not only the LSU fan base, there's going to be a lot of buzz, and the hype train will be legit at that point. And I think that's when the light will be on for this team and Brian Kelly, that we have a chance to really do something special. So watch that 3-game stretch closely. I think that'll be very telling about this LSU team. So yeah, to me, looking back on the Texas A&M loss, you start to kind of get the feel like that was more so a game that they obviously lost, but you kind of get the feel like that was a game where it was just a kind of more so a fluke than it was just a huge collapse and disappointment. For example, if they had lost that A&M game and then they had really fallen apart against Georgia, and then let's say they even beat Purdue, but it's not as convincing, I think then there's a lot more question marks in this offense or in this off season. I think the A&M loss was why you could argue it's more of a fluke, because A&M has a lot of talent. I think that's why people kind of defended LSU a little bit in that loss. Texas A&M, you see the 4-7 record on the logo when you're going into the game, and you're like, yeah, Texas A&M. Yeah, Texas A&M. Wow, having a really if you're a casual, if you're an LSU fan but you don't really follow how the other teams do, you're probably thinking like, wow, Texas A&M's having a really bad year. This is bad record, bad football team, but you forget that strong recruiting classes. Jimbo Fisher's a guy that's won a national title, so you feel like that loss just more excusable, but you want to. Hopefully LSU learns from that, and that they play Florida like that later in the season. Florida, a team that I've touched on, could be better than people think. You hope for LSU that the Florida game does not become a game like that, where not that LSU's overlooking them, but they go into the game where their confidence is riding high and they think they can almost they can almost just kind of show up and win that game. You hope that's not the case for LSU football. You hope they go into the Florida game with a lot of confidence, expecting a tough physical fight, respecting the high-end talent that the Florida Gators have, and the coaching ability that Billy Napier has. So hopefully the Florida game does not turn into the A&M game last year. Obviously, they do end with Texas A&M this year, but you have to believe that the players last year, that taste in their mouth after that loss, they're going to understand. And this year they're going to have more depth in the defensive line. Mason Smith back. The transfers, Paris Shan, Jefferson, all that depth on the defensive line, you got to believe that they're going to be ready for a four-quarter game against Texas A&M, and they're really going to try to play better in the trenches. I think Texas A&M really won the line of scrimmage in that game last year. You saw A-Chain, the running back, have a big game, and A&M just really looked focused, determined. I think this year LSU, with their improved depth and their focus, I think LSU wins that game. But the question marks, the big keys for me for this LSU team are the 3-game stretch against Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Mississippi State, and then how they perform in that Florida game. And then, obviously, Alabama's going to be a big game. Florida State's going to be a big game. But those are going to be, LSU is going to be up for those games. So here's the thing. Like, if LSU is a championship-level contender, like in 2019, then if they're really as good as we think they are, and you're having a championship season, those are wins. I think you kind of see, like you see Alabama in 2000, or who I'm trying to think, like Clemson when they've won it all. Like you see, they are a dominant team, but they'll have a little blimp against a team like Pitt where they probably shouldn't have lost. I think LSU, if they do, you get the feel like they may drop a game this year. Like just because it's so hard to go 12-0 in the SEC, but you get the feel like you hope for LSU's sake it is a game like maybe Missouri pulls an upset. Like Missouri's another team. You get the feel like if LSU does lose a game, you hope it's just not a game that will cost them as far as SEC West implications. Like you hope it's not to Alabama. But yeah, I've talked about a lot of the incoming guys in the recruiting class for 2023. Kyle Parker was another receiver I really like, 4-star guy. This guy that's got a lot of really good traits. I like his ability I like his run after the catch ability. I like that he's quiet at the catch point. This guy who's got really good speed after the catch and can really accelerate into his routes. Kyle Parker was kind of a guy that I'm like, are they really bringing in I've watched Shelton Sampson. I watched a couple of the other, or another one, forget the other wide receiver they have, but I'm like, I'm going to watch another LSU incoming freshman, and I'm watching another guy with another guy who's got a bunch of high-end skill sets. I'm like, how many guys can they bring in that have this many high-end level traits? And I'm like, Kyle Parker, this is kind of he's their perfect example of a sleeper, under the radar, 4-star wide receiver, if you will. Like, there's not a lot of buzz around this guy, but I'm watching him and I'm like, he checks, once again, like Sampson Jr., checks off all the boxes you want in a guy that could have the potential to be a really good college receiver and have a game that translates to the NFL. I mean, you see leaping ability. You watch him, like you see the punt return ability. You watch him, and when players have an angle on him, and he outruns them, he leaves them like 10 to 15 yards behind in the dust. So I turned on Kyle Parker, and I was like, yeah, 4-star wide receiver. I'm sure I'm probably going to be impressed somewhat. I'll probably be saying a lot of solid, good traits, but man, I came away from watching this guy, and I'm like, this guy has a chance to, maybe it's not next year, but this guy has a chance to really shine down the road for LSU, and he's gonna have a chance to make an impact in Baton Rouge for the Tigers. So, yeah, just wanted to touch on Kyle Parker, another talented incoming freshman LSU's going to bring in. And yeah, so I kind of wanted to go over the offense. I wanted to do some positive, some optimism, say positive things about every projected offensive starter in LSU. So first guy, Kyron Lacy. So Kyron Lacy, the positive, this guy seems to have gotten better and better each year, whether it was at his prior school, Louisiana. Where was he at? Louisiana Lafayette or Louisiana Monroe, but seems like he's improved. This guy, I went back and watched his high school tape, and the traits and skill set is all there for Kyron Lacy to succeed. He's just got to put it all together. He's got to be consistent this year. But I'll say this about Lacy. The guy is explosive after the catch. He knows he can go up and high point the ball well, so that is all there for Kyron Lacy. We'll just see if he can put it all together this year. So big chance, big opportunity. You saw him flash in the spring game, so you hope those flashes turn into consistency week in and week out. But Kyron Lacy, it's all there as far as the explosiveness after the catch, ability to high point the ball. Those are some of the key things that stand out about Lacy. Brian Thomas, first thing. Brian Thomas, wide receiver, number 11, experience, reliable pass catcher, good route runner. Brian Thomas, guy that's played a lot of good, solid football for LSU. You hope he can just be that good, reliable route runner for this offense. And then wide receiver Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors, true difference maker, one of the best wide receivers in college football. Big fan of what Malik Neighbors can do. Excited to see how he performs. Will Campbell, the offensive tackle. So Will Campbell got a year of experience under his belt as a true freshman. Will Campbell's got his eyes on doing big things in year 2, continue to improve his anchor, continue to maybe even take another step in pass protection. But yeah, Campbell, so good as just a true freshman, and a year experience under his belt. You got to believe he's going to play even better, and he's developing into one of the top offensive tackles in all of college football as just a true sophomore. Miles Frazier. So Miles Frazier has been I think he's one of the most underrated. I think he's the most underrated player on the LSU roster. This guy that's good in pass protection, good run blocker, a guy that's just been steady Eddie. And now at this point has a lot of experience for LSU. And a guy who he plays fast and looks like he's always processing information, has ability to react quickly to stunts and blitzes. So Miles Frazier, experience, good pass protector, good run blocker, and a guy that's got a lot of experience playing. Charles Turner at the center position. Charles Turner, a lot of experience, played in 27 games now for LSU. Started 12 games last year. So yeah, Charles Turner, talented center, a guy like Frazier, can run block, can pass block. They're going to expect big things out of him. He's going to be one of the guys that's going to be penciled in as a starter. Just hopefully he stays healthy. Hopefully he plays at a high level for him. Garrett DeLinger. So Garrett DeLinger was a former Michigan high school native. DeLinger, a guy that you love his versatility. He can play all 5 positions in the offensive line, 6'5", 300. Guy that not a lot of playing time, but does have some experience. So his versatility and some of the experience and just the size and aggressiveness he plays with. Emory Jones at right tackle. Jones, you got to love his ability as a run blocker and a pass blocker. And like Will Campbell, played high-end level football as just a true freshman, all freshman SEC. So you got to believe that him and Campbell are going to take a step in year 2, and you love that they got so much experience as just 2 freshmen. So the offensive line going to be a strong, cohesive unit. Brian Kelly was confident in the offensive line. He said he loves going into a season. He said it makes a big difference going into a season not only having a returning quarterback, because you don't have to worry about that. It's a very important going into a season with an experienced offensive line. You don't have to worry about how they gel together. You don't have to worry about maybe plugging other guys in at different positions, maybe taking out or trying to play younger guys. So Brian Kelly loves that they have experience on the offensive line. And then Mason Taylor at tight end. Mason Taylor, simply put, one of the best tight ends in college football. You could argue he probably is. Brock Bowers is the number 1 tight end in college football, but you could argue Mason Taylor is the second best tight end in college football. So Mason Taylor is going to have a chance to do some really nice things as just only a true sophomore. You saw how effective he was in year 1, the 2-point conversion to beat Alabama, so stepping up in big-time games. So yeah, Mason Taylor, simply put, probably the second best tight end in college football. He's an NFL-level tight end playing in college and is going to be a focal point to the LSU offense. So then Jaden Daniels, the big positive with Jaden Daniels, I know we've talked Jaden Daniels a lot, but year 2 in the offense now, in the same offensive coordinator. Just those 2 things are really key for a quarterback to have success. Year 2 of an offense and same offensive coordinator. Usually that is a recipe for a quarterback to improve. So, yeah, I will rest on those 2 things with Jaden Daniels. Running back Noah Cain. A lot of experience. Cain might not be the starter, but it's going to kind of depend on the game who's going to get the workload. But yeah, Noah Cain, physical running backs, guy that's got experience, is good at the goal line, can run with power, fall forward consistently. So yeah, those are all the positives I wanted to touch on. All the projected LSU starters. But yeah, it seems like, to me, I think the media and experts all kind of agreeing on something, even though it doesn't tend to always be right. Like there's a lot of teams that, like last year, the Denver Broncos were getting a lot of hype. They kind of fell off a little bit, but it seems like the media is buying all in on this LSU team, and I think that can be important because a lot of times we do, like, I look at consensus draft rankings and consensus things are there for a reason, because if most people agree upon something, usually oftentimes that is right. So the media and a lot of people betting on LSU, it shows that there is a very high chance that they're going to do something special, and this is going to be a very good football team. Obviously, could the media and the betting markets be wrong? Absolutely. But to me, as an LSU fan, you got to believe that when a lot of people are buying into something, you got to believe that it has a chance to be good, if not very good or elite. So the fact that people are believing in LSU is big. And I think that when they interview Brian Kelly, it does seem like he does have kind of like that calm confidence about him. It doesn't seem like I don't think that's Brian Kelly's personality to be like rah-rah, overly confident, cocky, but it does seem like he's kind of got a calm confidence about him. I think deep down, he is a coach where I think he knows some of the concerns and weaknesses of his team. Obviously, he doesn't want to talk about those too often, too much. He did a little bit. He is still concerned about the depth, though. But to me, I think Brian Kelly feels similar to how I feel, and I can't say this is exactly how I feel, but I think he understands that something special is here if it all comes together and we stay healthy. I think that is the main thing. We're going to have, we will have some injuries. We will have guys dinged up a little bit, but can we kind of survive that storm of injuries? Maybe, because that's the thing. Sometimes injuries happen beginning, middle of the season. You got some guys out for a few weeks, but can we be clicking? If we do have injuries, can we be fully healthy at the right time? So they play Alabama later in the season. If we do have some injuries, can we be healthy for the Alabama game where that does not affect us too much? But yeah, I think it's cool. I think a lot of people, I guess the case for the media overhyping LSU would be people want to see someone other than Georgia and Alabama. And I think that's what's kind of funny about LSU. That's why people were so refreshed that they won the 2019 national title. I think people kind of bonded with that team because it was a team that was doing something special, playing at a high-end level, quarterback NFL talent that was not Georgia or Alabama. I think that's why that 2019 LSU was such a breath of fresh air for people, because it was someone other than Georgia and Alabama going out and dominating people, not only just dominating people physically at the line of scrimmage and defensively, but doing it in a flashy, fun sort of way with Joe Burrow slinging it around the yard, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson just dominating other corners. I think that was what was so fun and enticing about the 2019 LSU team. So, LSU this year, I think LSU fans this year, can we see something? I think even though the 2019 season seems far away, it really was not too long. It's still fresh, I think, in a lot of LSU fans' memory. So I think, can we just get a little taste of what that was like again? And even if LSU wins it all this year, it's probably not going to be as dominant as that, but can we just get a little taste of what that was like just a few years ago when all things were clicking and you really saw LSU football looking the way LSU football fans want it to look? And not just, I think what was cool about 2019, not only did LSU look like how they did in 2007 and even in 2011, even though they didn't win it, I think what was cool is you saw them be dominant at the line of scrimmage, make plays defensively, but you really saw them kind of take that next step, and you see some of the explosiveness and in the full potential of the offense. And I think that's what's cool about Brian Kelly being more so of an offensive-minded guy. That's kind of the case for them to win a national title, because Brian Kelly can come in and keep the identity of a physical, tough, stingy defense program, but also he's a guy that with his offense can get enough life out of this offense where when it all comes together, it's all a good complementary offense, defense performance, hopefully in a week in and week out consistent basis. So you got to believe that Brian Kelly, that was another thing that enticed Brian Kelly is it's like it's always been a tough physical defensive program. If I can implement my offensive system, hopefully earlier rather than later, which it appears to be earlier, year 2, very telling. If I can implement it early, we have a chance to do something special in year 2, year 3. And I think that's, with all those things working and all those things that I mentioned, I think that's why that is part of the media hype for sure. But yeah, the offensive line, I think that is cool that they do have a set in stone projected offensive line. I think Miles Frazier will have a really good year. Garrett Dillinger, you hope that Dillinger does play well this year. You hope that, no disrespect, hopefully he's not the weak link on the LSU offensive line. Or Turner, one of those two guys, you got to believe probably is the lesser of the rest, but still they are still no slouch and they are good, solid players. You just hope that they do not you hope that their continued progression now with experience, you hope that this is their best season for Charles Turner and Dillinger. And then that leads me to the next point. You really hope Emory Jones or Will Campbell, I don't think they will. You hope that one of those guys does not take a step back. I think that's the hope. That's why the offensive line is getting so much hype that it could be dominant. You feel like with everything I outlined and the positives of each offensive lineman, you really hope that if all those come together and they can all take another step, that's where you can really see this offensive line not just becoming very good, but an elite unit and maybe the best in the country. But yeah, I think the receiving core is going to be fascinating because I get the feel now that I've watched Kyle Parker too. You feel like Kyle Parker or Samson Jr., you feel like someone's going to emerge. Maybe it even isn't like maybe even Lacey. Like maybe Lacey plays really well and you get another freshman emerge. Like maybe there's multiple freshmen that emerge. So you get the feel that one of these receivers other than Neighbors is going to emerge. And that's what I'm super excited to see who it's going to be. And then even Mason Taylor. Does Mason Taylor just become a dominant tight end? Does he really? I know he's not draft eligible. But does he almost does he almost challenge Brock Bowers for tight end 1 in college football? I know that's a very that seems to be a far-fetched statement to make. But to me, I think Jane Daniels does have some legit. Mason Taylor does have some upside at tight end. Like, there's not a lot of, Brock Bowers, tight ends that are really great. You see it, they tend to really burst onto the scene right away. Even Michael Mayer drafted by the Raiders, you saw that even though Mayer never really became an elite game changer for Notre Dame, you saw right away he looked like he belonged. And Mason Taylor is a guy that right away looked like he belonged. In year 2, I think, even if he kind of just plays about the same as he did as a freshman, I think he made such an impact as a freshman that I think that he still will have a bright future ahead. And I think that he's already proven enough where his skill set can translate well to the NFL, and he will be a dominant pass catcher, run blocker, and a guy that's going to continue to make big time plays and big time moments for the LSU Tigers. So I think that's a concern for LSU is what if they do drop 2 games early? Let's say I talked about that important 3-game stretch of Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State. What if they do drop 2 games early? Or what if they do drop one of those games? Or what if they do lose to Florida State and then they lose to Ole Miss? Is that complete cause for panic? I think, to me, though, as tough as the LSU fan base, how much does that pressure just amplify on the players and coaches? I think that's definitely a question to really ponder. I think, to me, though, I think a lot of people would say LSU losing those 2 of those games doesn't seem possible. But to me, though, it doesn't seem too far-fetched. It doesn't seem too outlandish of a possibility. So I think it really raises a question because, like, you lose 2 games early, and you saw LSU could still last year, even with the 2 losses, could still accomplish a lot of their goals. But with those 2 losses, that just makes it harder. That just every game becomes more and more. Not even more and more. Every game becomes a must win. You cannot lose at that point. And then now you're statistically you've really hurt yourself because now you have to hope for Alabama loses when you play them. Alabama has to have a loss, and then you have to beat them. So you have the head-to-head. So obviously Alabama could drop a few games, but what are the odds that Alabama loses more than 2 or 3 games? So I think that's something interesting. But to me, though, you kind of get I guess you could make the argument that if LSU is going to do something special this year, you're going to see it right away, and that if they really are as good as I think they could be, the media thinks they could be, this LSU team thinks they could be, I don't think that they will drop those 2 games early. But I think it is certainly is a question to ponder, and it's something I thought about and something I certainly wanted to discuss a little bit. But yeah, with the schedule, certainly a couple easier games. Grambling, Georgia State, those are. So I guess the ultimate guarantee for LSU is you have 2 wins on the schedule that you're guaranteed to win. Kind of like last year playing Southern, like that was a guaranteed win. You love, to me, even though I love that Brian Kelly said he would play 12 SEC games. To me, though, I think deep down that is kind of, you don't, as a coach, you never really relax. But I think on a Saturday, especially when you're going through the gauntlet of the SEC, I think it is nice to kind of go into a game where, yeah, we basically have a 99.9% chance we're going to win this football game. So I think that is a nice luxury as a coach, even though fans kind of get lulled to sleep by these games. You saw in Alabama a few years ago, their student section they didn't show up for one of those smaller schools. So yeah, I know it's a payday for some of those smaller schools. I know it's a nice easy win for probably 98, 99% of the time, but it's it's not always the most exciting thing for a fan. And I'm one of those people. I'm in favor of what if the SEC playing 12 straight SEC games. I would be in favor of that. But yeah, with LSU, I think the defensive line has a chance to be really good. I love the depth that they have in this LSU team. I think that the linebacking core will be interesting. How does Spates develop? How much of his experience and how much of his talent really shines? The cornerback position, I think is going to be solid. I think it's going to be similar to last year. I think Alexander will be like Mekhi Gardner and Converse. I think he'll be a solid player. He does display a talented overall skill set that I think makes him formidable in the SEC, especially against SEC wide receivers. So, yeah, I mean the secondary, it's probably not this like. Probably in the SEC, they probably have the 3rd strongest secondary, I would say. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, probably behind Georgia and Alabama probably have the 2 strongest secondaries in the SEC, but LSU having the 3rd strongest secondary, I think that's no slouch at all. I think if you go into a given year and you can say we have the 3rd best secondary in the SEC, I think that's fine. I think that's a positive. So yeah, LSU probably the third strongest secondary in college football. But yeah, and the running back depth. I think Logan Diggs is getting more and more buzz. Maybe quietly Logan Diggs is going to be the starting running back for LSU this year. Diggs, a guy who Brian Kelly has really talked about a lot, and I know reporters were asking him a lot of questions about Logan Diggs, and I think that he's a guy who showed a lot of ability at Notre Dame. Still a young guy, a guy that you like his overall skill set as a pass catcher, as a runner. So yeah, how he performs, I think, is going to be fascinating for LSU. You got to believe that LSU is going to find a way to get him on the field. Like even in week 1, say it's a Noah Cain day, you got to believe that they're gonna find ways to get Logan Diggs on the field. Maybe it's in 3rd down, 3rd and long. You got to believe that LSU really wants to utilize this guy, not just sit him on the bench, because even though they like Noah Cain, they like Josh Williams, Armani Goodwin, Logan Diggs, just too talented to sit the bench for LSU. And I know you can make that argument. That's what's tough about the running back position. It seems like at schools like LSU, they usually have so many talented guys, but like kind of like Denbrock said, it's going to kind of depend on a game by game basis. I know it sounds like they will rotate in guys, but like, yeah, week 1 against Florida State, maybe if it's a Josh Williams guy, do you just kind of stick with Josh Williams? Like, if you're having success moving the ball and Josh Williams is running well, do you kind of just get into that flow of feeding Josh Williams, and you don't really want to rotate a back out who's in a rhythm and really helping the ball or helping move the ball downfield? So, yeah, the running back room is even though people think say it's weakness, I kind of look at it from a positive point of view. I'd say I think it's a good room, and I think it's a solid good room with good depth. And yeah, Josh Williams, he was asked about. He's one of the few guys, kind of like Charles Turner, who was on the team back in 2019. He was asked, how does being on the 2019 team with all that talent, how does that really help you? How does that really help your game this year, or something along those lines? And he's like, yeah, being around those guys really helped. Just seeing the work ethic of Jamar Chase and what they did day in and day out. So, yeah, I think that's something that's underrated. I think that's how teams can repeat as champions, or how another case in point of why LSU could do something special this year is because there is some guys on this roster who have that experience of seeing players, what they did day in and day out, week in and week out, of what it takes to get to the pinnacle of college football. So Josh Williams, he has an understanding of the type of work ethic that Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson had, and the idea of what it's going to take in the consistency level to get back to what they did in 2019. And Josh Williams, I think it's interesting him being on the roster. Like I talked about, the fan base wants another taste of what that was like in 2019. I'm sure that's something Josh Williams thinks about, what the feeling of getting to the top in 2019. You know, there's not really another feeling like that. And that should be that extra drive for him in the weight room and conditioning to want to get back there. And you feel like that'll push him a little extra harder. And yeah, there's really not a lot of people. Winning the Super Bowl is a big thing, but there's not a lot of people that say they won a college football national championship. I think I've always thought winning a college football national championship is so special. There's just not a lot of people that can do it. You see, there's a lot of guys in the NFL go on to have great careers, and in college they did, their teams were bad. They lost a lot of games, and you can only play college football once. And even though it seems like with the transfer portal, guys are playing for many, many years now, you can only play college football one time. And then even in the NFL, the lifespan is short in the NFL. So yeah, getting that Super Bowl is awesome, but a college football national championship, I think, is just pure. It's just a nice, pure, good feeling of accomplishing something. Now, obviously, there's NIL now, but it seems I think it's something. It's special to accomplish a feat like that when you're not a professional player. I think it's just in the bond you have at a pivotal point in your life. I think the LSU players. You know, LSU, a program that sees success around them. There's another question that I don't really want to dive deep in because it doesn't interest me too much. But Brian Kelly was asked about the success of like the baseball team and the gymnastic team and some of the other programs. I think, you know, my high school football coach used to say winning is contagious. So I think with LSU, I think Brian Kelly, I think he does. You know, I don't think these players want to give the other athletic programs too much success, and I don't think it's necessarily ego, but I think they're focused so much on their success that they don't really have time to really watch too much of the other teams. I know Mekhi Wingo said he was following baseball and he wasn't a fan of baseball, but I think that winning is contagious, and the other program, I think maybe subconsciously that will push this LSU football team to really try to live up to that standard, even though I don't think they're going to go around and brag too often about it because they're so focused on their task in hand. They have a quite the challenge ahead of them and in the SEC West, but I think they appreciate it, and I think that LSU football being the focal point of LSU, I think they really want to push and strive for that standard too. So I think that's really cool. So I'm going to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning into Bayou Bengals football. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.